I've hurt people. I've hurt people physically, emotionally, intellectually. I've hurt people. I know that, and I've dealt with that. The stories are great. I mean, they're very unusual because you have a Ivy League. I mean, I had everything in front of me. I'm 6'2". I've modeled. I've been in a movie. I've done a lot of stuff. Okay. I've been successful in business, but how did I go to the gutter and then bring myself back up?
Welcome to another great episode of Dre and Smiley, The Inner Circle.
Andre, my heart just soars because it's not often that I meet people that don't remember me, but I love it when I do. So today we have Ken Miller, and he's someone who's changed my life. So I want to tell you a quick story about how we met. I took my family to Dartmouth College in 2018. We're sitting there for a reunion. We had something called Thayer Hall. I walked into Thayer Hall with my wife, my daughter. I see Ken sitting there by himself. I go over and join his table. He's sitting there and he was a little excited and he started talking to us about how he went on ancestry.com and he was going to meet his family. And I was like, what? And I was like, what? And so we just listened. I didn't know this guy. And then he started saying how it's going to be cool. Later that evening, that Saturday, we saw Ken. He was illuminated. He had met his siblings. He was telling us about it. We asked him about it, and he told us this great story about how he met his siblings and different things. So I said, when I came back to Tampa, I said, I'm going to go on Ancestry. Dre, you know this story. I met an older sister. I met 3 younger brothers. I got nieces and nephews. I met my biological father in 2021, 2022. Never knew who he was. And this man right here is just impacted my whole lineage, and all of my brothers know him. I was just like, his light has shined so far. I got a brother in Japan now. I got a brother in New York. I got a brother in Maryland. Everyone knows Ken's name in my family because of the impact, the light, the spark he planted in me. So Ken Miller is a CFRE, a dynamic trainer, speaker, author, and consultant. As the president of the Denali FSP LLC Consultants, he leads transformative strategies in fundraising, empowering organizations and associations across sectors. Recognized for his dynamic speaking style, he engages audience with the deep knowledge of business best practices, leadership, and personal growth, ensuring participants leave equipped for impactful outcomes. Ken, welcome to the podcast. Do you remember that story?
Of course, Kevin, I remember that story.
You remember me?
There you go. There you go. Right answer. That's the right answer.
Yeah, that's the right answer. What we call the club answer. Yes, I know you. Yeah, I remember you.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember I didn't get back to New Hampshire that often. I was coming from Alaska to visit, and there was a sibling, a sister that I had never met. And she was in New York, and so she drove over from New York to Hanover, New Hampshire, and had opportunity to meet her and her son, and it was phenomenal. And you did see that glow, to know that this is a blood relative that, for 60 years I did not know. And to be able to share that and to hear your story and really what we call serendipity, where you touch someone, you look at a book on the shelf and the book next to it. And it just puts a smile on my face to know that that impacted you in that way. And it opened up a world. That's what it did. It opened up a world, just like it opened up a world for me. So thank you for sharing that. My apologies for not remembering the specific, but I definitely remember that weekend. And I definitely remember speaking about it because I was excited to go meet these people because it was going to be my first time. I was a little nervous too. You never know what the reaction, but I've only had positive reactions from my genealogy research.
That is so amazing. Which class of Dartmouth are you?
I was class of 84. I still am class of 84.
So
Yeah.
84 and I was 88. So yeah, so we weren't there at the same time. So tell us about Ken Miller. Who's Ken Miller?
So Ken Miller is an individual that grew up in Alaska, but originally I'm from New York. First 6 years of my life I spent as a foster child. I was put up for adoption from my biological mother, who was a white teenage prostitute. My dad was the pimp and the drug dealer, and this is in New York. And she put me up for adoption at birth because it just wasn't going to be probably comfortable for her. And I did 6 years of foster homes. I was adopted by Irene and Sam Miller, moved upstate New York. I always tell people there's only two parts of New York. There's New York City and upstate. I was upstate. I moved upstate, Orange County, Middletown, and then at age 12, I moved over to Anchorage, Alaska. Went to high school there. I was pretty precocious, as you could say. National Merit Scholar, accepted to Harvard. I hated cities, so I went to Dartmouth and got my degree from Dartmouth. Graduated with a degree in fraternity and a minor in drinking. And within 3 years, serious about that. And within 3 years, I was homeless on the streets of Seattle, and I was remained homeless for 20 years. I'm a three-time convicted felon, spent many years behind bars, 14 inpatient treatment centers, missions, soup kitchens, all the things that we do to try to survive as a street-level crack addict and alcoholic. In 2004, I was arrested, hopefully for the last time, and I've been sober ever since September 22nd, 2004, just celebrated 20 years last year. Today, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I'm a book, I write books. But what I predominantly do is I try to touch people in a positive way, literally. And I have a passion for working with young Black men. That's my passion. And so I mentor, and I've been doing that for 15 years. I have a Black men's book study that's national. I mentor up to 30 men at a time. I have 10 right now, but they're Black men all over the country in business and really in life is what I mentor. I do life well. I'm not going to pat myself on the back, but I do life well. I am competent to life, but I had to go through a lot to get there. That is in a very abridged version.
Yeah. So Ken, um, this begs a number of questions. So
Mhm.
something that we have learned, Smiley and I on here is talking to different people's exposure directly impacts horizon, right? So looking at the first phase of your life, that's a tough beginning by any measure. You withstood that and you were able to overcome that obstacle and get into an Ivy League. Let's start there. So where did that simply the idea of going to an Ivy League come from, considering where you began? And then we'll
Great question.
go
Great
from
question. So
there.
it
Yeah.
starts when I was 6. So when I was adopted at age 6, I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I couldn't tell time, I couldn't even tie my shoes because they weren't teaching that in the foster homes. Could you go to a foster home for a month or 3 months or whatever amount of time, then they move you to another one. So a gentleman named Jacob and I, who I thought was my brother, because I'm super young, he wasn't, but I thought he was my brother. We went together. We were like a two young Black children going to these foster homes. So my first summer when I was adopted by Irene and Sam Miller, my mother sat me down with 3x5 index cards and we did phonetics, TH, PH, and I cried because I wanted to play. I didn't want to do phonetics, but I fell in love with reading. And by the time I was in second grade, I was reading at the sixth grade level. It was natural to me, and I loved reading. So I was always good in the softer subjects, the histories, the English. I wasn't a math or science person. And so let's go back to the Ivy Leagues. The reason I went to the Ivy Leagues is when I was a junior, they started recruiting me. I played sports. I was very well rounded, involved in a lot of different things. And so I had like 160 colleges, because I fit a lot of boxes since 1980. And my mother had gone to Columbia's Teachers College to get her master's. So that's when I was exposed, obviously, to the Ivy. I didn't know it was Ivy Leagues, but I was exposed to Columbia. And I hated cities. And I mean that with a passion. I hated cities. I grew up in the country, upstate New York. I mean, country, country. And then I moved to Anchorage, which you might as well call it country too. And so when it came time to go to college, I love it. To me, it's funny now. I No way I could go to Princeton because I'm from New York and I hate New Jersey. I mean, this is what you think is a 17-year-old. And I didn't want to go to school in the city, so I only applied to three colleges out of, like, say, the 160 that had recruited me, and those were Dartmouth, Harvard, and Oberlin. And when the acceptance letters came, they were all yes, we'd like for you to matriculate at our college. And my mother said, where do you want to go? And I said, Oberlin. And she said, that's great. What's your first choice? I was, they were the first to let blacks in, and I thought Oberlin, 17.
Right.
Well, it looked like Dartmouth. I had never seen Dartmouth, never been there, never stepped on campus until, I flew in that September of 1980 to the campus. And I love Dartmouth. I'm a big Dartmouth fan. So anyway, that's what got me in. I was precocious. I was intelligent. I loved to read. Okay, that's more probably what saved me is I love to read, and then I was very well rounded, and that I did a lot of community and things within the school. As you can see, I'm just a gregarious, outgoing person, so it helped me probably get in.
So then that takes me to the next question, next obvious question. I know a lot of people that went to the Ivy Leagues. When they leave, like my niece, for example, graduated and jobs are lined up for her, making great money. And in some cases, and maybe I'm just surrounded by people who have had success stories. But it seems that there was a hard left for you that you took when you left Dartmouth, because you mentioned that you eventually fell on drugs and hard times, things like that. Talk to me about what that journey, what that looked like, and what happened there exactly.
So I returned home to Anchorage, Alaska. It's just my mother and I, and I was struggling with depression, really due to my alcoholism. And so I sat on the couch for like a month, and my mom's like, "This is not going to work." Okay. And so she took me to my first treatment center, a place called North Point in Anchorage, Alaska, outpatient treatment center. I don't count the outpatients. I've done 14 inpatient treatment centers, but anyway, it was my first one. And I would remain sober for 2 years. So I went corporate, and I was representing 3M products, Bell and Howell at that time, and I did very well. 1985, I made $50,000, which was a lot of money in 1985. It was big money, and did well. And then in 1986, I went on vacation to Hawaii and said, maybe I'm not an alcoholic. It's been 2 years. I smell good. I look good. I talk well. Maybe I'm not. And within a week, I was a mess because I is what I is. And so that began my descent. Took another couple years before I was homeless because you acquire material, and but within 2 years, literally, I was in the missions.
Let's talk about your book because you just recently released or published a book. Does it talk about your history, your experiences, or is it talking about like seven principles or seven successes, or how much of your life from the say prior to Dartmouth to homelessness, the recovery from 2004? Is it all of those chapters in your book, or do you focus only on the post 2004?
No, it's definitely all, because the name of the book is Becoming Ken. A lot of my stories about identity and the self-talk. I'm an ex-con. I'm a drug addict. I'm not loved. I'm homeless, whatever it may be. I don't have a mother. These are things I put on myself. These are labels. And today, my name is Ken Miller, and I'm a kind and gentle man. That's who I am. But how did I get to that point? How did I become Ken? And it's called Becoming Ken, a black man's journey from the Ivy Leagues to prison and back again. And so I would say two-thirds of it is the story, but in each chapter, I also talk about business principles and things that I've learned, life lessons. And again, I can speak to this because I am competent to life. I have high self-esteem. I do life well. That's the best way I can put it. So how did I get to a point where I do life well? Because I did life very, very poorly. Very. And it impacted me, but it impacted society and others. I've hurt people. I've hurt people physically, emotionally, intellectually. I've hurt people. I know that, and I've dealt with that. But who am I today, and how did I get there? And what lessons can you learn, dear Mr. and Mrs. Reader, from reading this? The stories are great. I mean, they're very unusual because you have a Ivy League. I mean, I had everything in front of me. I'm 6'2". I've modeled. I've been in a movie. I've done a lot of stuff. Okay. I've been successful in business, but how did I go to the gutter and then bring myself back up? Because everybody has their experiences, their trauma, their sense of less than that they've experienced. And maybe something that you read in there can motivate you and or that literally there are practical things that you can do to raise your self-esteem or to be competent to life.
I started this podcast by saying you were the spark that helped me find a whole new world of my family. Was there anyone that was like that silent spark for you?
So my mother was the most phenomenal human being I've ever met. Okay. And facts, that's facts. From what she overcame to be a black woman growing up in the 30s and 40s to running nursing programs at the college level. My mother danced on Broadway. She was in 2 movies. She had a record album that she put out. She was a poet laureate of Nevada. She was beautiful and one of the kindest and most gentle and spiritual women you'd ever met. So I had that as a role model, but that didn't keep me from smoking crack. Believe that. Okay. In the end, it was my relationship to God and a discussion and a conversation that God and I had on a bunk in jail in 2004 that led me on the path to where I'm at today. But I didn't have a quote unquote role model. I didn't have a sponsor I looked to or a mentor I looked to. I want to be like him or them. I had to have conversations with Ken. I had all the ingredients. I call it the batter to bake a great cake within me. I needed to release that, and I had to allow myself forgiveness to have the ability to become who I am today.
I love that. Tell me this. So one thing I know is that the siblings that I have, they impact my life in different ways. I have a sister I'm extremely close to. She keeps me motivated and inspired and humble and things like that. When you reconnected with your siblings, with your family members that you found through ancestry.com, how did that impact your life?
Great question. I have to think about that for 1 second.
Sure.
So first of all, let's rewind to 16 when I did the DNA test. So for the first, and I talk about this in one of my talks, but my first 13 years, I thought my mother was black because I'm black. So I thought she was black. And then my adopted mother said, your mother was a white teenage girl because the records are hidden, but she knew that information. And it devastated me. I mean, devastated me because it took away that picture I had in my mind. So when I knew she was white, so when it came time, and this was important for me, when I reached out to her, I was afraid that she would say no, because that was something that happened 60 years ago and she had moved on. But she welcomed me in and she was lived for approximately 2 more years. When I met we created a relationship and I'm actually like the trustee for my nephews and niece. But when I met my sisters, that was phenomenal. So I always say I have the white side and the black side. And it was also really good for me because my my background is, and I try to talk about this often when I'm talking about dynamics of being a black male in the United States. My experience, I'm an Ivy League Anchorage black male. That's different than one that grew up in Florida or Atlanta or a Southern black. I grew up Quaker. Quaker. That was a church we went to, Friends. Okay. So I was a little different, but I'm still black. Okay. And that's what you'll see when you see me. But when I met my father's family, Columbus, Georgia, I don't know the South. I'm not a, that's not my world. And it was really interesting to meet them and to have that experience. So I meet that, and then I have the white side, which is New York Irish Catholic, very much Irish Catholic. Okay. And so I have one sister on that side, and I have two sisters on the black side, and I am close to all of them today. And they're great people.
That's great. That's great, man. So let's move on just a bit in terms of the book club that you have, the book study you have with the black men. Tell me about that and what was the catalyst to starting that? And for those that are listening, because I understand that it's like a nationwide thing that you're doing.
Mhm, mhm.
The catalyst of starting it, what it is, and how others can participate in it.
It's called the Imperium in Imperio Black Men's Book Study. And the reason I named it that, that was a book that was written in the 1890s by a black man that was about literally black power. It's not very well known, but it's really phenomenal. So I named it after that. Okay. And that's Latin, but I could go on to that. So this is what happens, I believe, in life. We have ideas, we have dreams, we have aspirations. And I had a dream to have a men's book study, black men's book study. And I'd been talking about it for 3 or 4 years. And I finally got to the point I said, Ken, let's stop talking about it. Let's do. Let's create action. And so in January, I set it up and I set it very specific. I had parameters around it. I wanted to keep it to a certain size, which was 24 or less. We would only do nonfiction books. I know there's some great fiction out there. I'm a big Walter Mosley fan and, other black writers, but it's going to be nonfiction. And also, I'm really big on this at my stage in my journey. It's not about me. I'll start it off. I will lead it. We'll do the first book, which is The Six Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. And then the group will pick the next book as a consensus. As long as it's nonfiction, could be The Great Migration, could be the 1619 Project. It's whatever you guys choose. I am just a member. Okay. And so we meet every 2 weeks for 1 hour. We talk about the chapter and we go in depth and we talk as black men in a safe environment. We do not record. And I can tell you, the outline. And this is my goal. And please hear this, Trey and Dr. Smiley, is that my goal is for 4 or 5 of the other gentlemen to start a black men's or a black person's or a person's of color, whatever you're comfortable with, book study. You see the model, you can change it any way you want, but you do it so we spread this. The men who are on it, we have doctors, we have, gentlemen blue collar, we have anything between 20 and 50. They love it, at least the ones that, have stayed. They love it and are very, very happy to be a part of this, just to talk and have discourse with other black men.
Man, that's fascinating. When you mentioned also you mentor. Who do you mentor and what are the requirements?
All right, let's start off how it started. 2011, I was told I was going to get an award from the Anchorage NAACP. I'm like, great, whatever. And I am not an individual that spends a lot of time with, I'm just going to use the term, I'll just keep it real, black bourgeoisie. I'm just not me, not bougie. But that type of event can be. It's like all the blacks who have done well and the white politicians that want the vote. They always come to this NAACP. So anyway, I get there, I sit down at the table. It's a round table, and the individual that invited me, Wanda Green, president of the NAACP Anchorage chapter, and I'm looking at the schedule to see when I get my little award, and I'm working my way down, and I get to the last point. It says Ken Miller President's Award and speech. I'm like, what speech? Nobody told me I would do a speech. Yeah, true story. I laugh at myself because I even think back, and I remember I just remember that. And Juan has got her head down because she across the table. I think she realized. So anyway, it came time. I got up there and I said very simply, I'll, again, paraphrase this, we are the successful blacks in Anchorage. I know many of you, but you see all these youth go across the stage because they have all the youth awards. And I want to send a charge out to this audience. And my charge is women, grab a hold of one of these young ladies that walked across the stage and mentor them, support them, inspire them. Men, I would ask that you do the same thing. And my word is my bond. I will do that. And this is my charge to you. And everybody clapped. And I went over to a gentleman named Xavier Mason, who was, I think, a sophomore in college. And I said, you heard what I said? Are you interested? He said, yes. And now he went to Oxford, got a dual master's, an MBA, and MED, and is doing big things, big things. Okay. But I've been with him for 15 because it's open ended. So I started back in 2011. I have mentored probably 40, 50. They're all men of color. There was one that wasn't because he sort of slipped in, but we're all men of color, predominantly black. I have had a couple of Hispanics, Dominicans. And there's a very specific thing I do when I mentor. The first conversation I have, the first meeting I say to them is, what is your dream? And I give you permission to dream. And then I shut up. And I've had people sit there for 3, 4 minutes. I've had grown men cry because 3 years, 5 years, 7 years later, their dream has come to fruition. And I always say, it's not me. I'm just here to support you. And there's different things. I teach classes on mentorship. So it's very important to me. If you go to my Facebook page, that's me with my mentors. A group of them up in Anchorage. But now everything is done virtually, and I meet with them it's an explicit mentoring. And so I meet with them every 3 months for 1 hour. And then in between, you can call me anytime. And they do. Believe me, they do. And the age goes anywhere, probably at this point, it's more like 25 to 55 or something like that. But this is important. I say this. I have mentors. Alphonse Brown Jr., Jim Posey, and unfortunately Bernie Washington passed away. So I have mentors above me. There's me. I have 4 generations of black men helping black men. That's one of the reasons why I want to speak. That's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. It wasn't for money. It was for I could touch more people and share how do we as black men support and help other black men. And I can tell you how the systems work and the book studies and the mentorships and the teaching, but it's up to us to do that. Because if we keep waiting for others to help us, we may be still waiting. Okay.
Ken, this is exactly what I was mentioning earlier. You look at specifically, black men. We have to, it's not often we have a space we can go to where there's some other black men that are saying, hey, for example, the world is open to you. What's your biggest dream? Dream that biggest dream. You can get there, right? And so spaces like that are so important and valuable. So hearing you share the story about, how you use this book club to serve that purpose is that's amazing. It's powerful. And then the most important question I have for you, I think, is for others that want to tap into all that you offer, for example, speaking engagements, your book, things of that sort, what's the best way for them to connect with you? Do you have a website? Do you have social media? What do you want to share here?
I have multiple, multiple websites. I have a lot of social media. So let me tell you real quick, one of the things I just took on. I own a company called Evolution. And for anyone listening, AI, artificial intelligence, please, please, artificial intelligence doesn't care if you're an ex-con, does not care if you're black, doesn't care where you grew up or what hood. If you can learn artificial intelligence and learn how to utilize it for the betterment of you and your family or your loved ones, you will be ahead of the curve. And the curve is starting. So I have a company that's called Evolution. And what we do is I have virtual assistants offshore. I have them in West Africa, I have them in Ecuador, and I have them in the Philippines, and they're trained in AI. The reason I bring this up is that they do all my social media and they do everything that I do that's not me, like talking here. They take care of everything back room. And you can go there, but the main way to get in touch with me, and I tell people, Ken at kenmillerspeaks.com. That's my website for my speaking. Evolution, AIVALUTION.com is Evolution. Denali FSP is my company. I write grants for tribal entities throughout the country. My company does. We have staff that does that. And then LinkedIn is Ken Miller 84. And I'm the type who does this. I am not afraid of any person. I'm not afraid. So my phone number is 907-250-8488. Feel free to call me. And have the courage to call me. Because that's where it comes down a lot to. I don't want to bother him. You're not bothering me. Again, I want to give back. I'm fine. Financially, I'm super cool. Okay? Comfortability in my own body, I'm super cool. I have a beautiful wife. I got the grandkids. I'm good. What can I do to give back and give out? That's what I want to know.
Man, Ken, this has been phenomenal. But before we go into the final four, are there
Mhm.
any questions we should have asked you that we didn't ask you? This is your moment.
Yeah, I'll just talk about two things real quick. One is profound trauma and how do we bounce back from that? I'll start with that one. And then also I want to talk about drug addiction and alcoholism, but we'll just call it drug addiction because it's the same thing, substance misuse or abuse. So let's talk about profound trauma. In 1985, in 1984, I graduated from Dartmouth. In 1985, I began to build a relationship with my father, who I had not built a relationship because he was very violent towards me. I was the only child adopted. In April of 1985, he went over to my mom's job and shot her 6 times. Okay, that's my mother. And then was going over to my job to shoot me because that's what his plan was. But the gun jammed. So my mom lived for another 20, 30 years, still had 2 bullets in her, but she lived. But it was profound trauma. And how do you bounce back from? Because I had guilt because I had saw the gun 2 days before and I could have taken the gun from my dad because it was laying on the table. He was suicidal, and we're like, I want to take the gun. He's like, no, I needed to scare off burglars. Okay, great. It took me years to understand and to deal with my guilt and my anger toward my father, but I did. I healed that. When he passed away, we were cool. We were cool. Okay. And I've also forgiven myself for a couple things. One, on how I dealt with it, because the way I dealt with it was I asked permission of my boss to go to the hospital to visit my mom. He's like, of course, of course. And then I went back to work. I went back to work like nothing had happened. That's how I dealt with because I'd had some other situations. So that's one, and I'd forgiven myself for that. And I made amends to my mother because she thought I didn't love her because of the way I had no expression, no emotion. But again, that was my coping mechanism. I understand that all. So again, how do we bounce back? Because almost everyone, the vicissitudes of life entail pain. I can't say that enough times. So how do we deal with that? And I have ways. I talk to people. I've worked through some things. I'm not a counselor, but believe me, I've had experience and I can share that. Then the next one I always want to talk about is everybody gets affected by drugs and alcohol. If not yourself, you know someone, usually a relative or a good friend. And one of the key components of how I've dealt with drug and alcohol misuse is to take away the power of the antecedent. And what I mean by that, I don't believe in precursor. It wasn't because I was adopted. It wasn't because I was beat as a child. It wasn't because my dad shot my mom that I became a drug addict or remained in the drugs. I'm a drug addict because physiologically because this is real important that I say this. The reason that's important, that it's not antecedents, the preceding things, the before things that make you a drug addict or make you stay in the drug addiction, is because what happens is with the addict or alcoholic is if we take care of the problems, then we can drink or do drugs successfully. If I deal with those situations, which were the antecedents, then I'm fine. Remember 1986? Hey, I smell good. I look good. I talk well. I can drink now. It doesn't matter where your standing is or what happened to you in the past. I'm just real strong on that, and I just wanted to share those two things.
I love that.
One last one is you have your book, you have the book club, the mentor. Have you considered having your own podcast?
Time. So what I teach is capacity. You have capacity in two areas: time and money. I run four businesses. I have staff. I have employees. Four businesses. I still do the volunteer. I'll say this. Last July, I had 52 different volunteer commitments. 52. 29 individuals and 23 boards, committees, subcommittees, task forces that I believed in, that I was a part of. And I tracked my hours. I had one year, I did almost 1,100 hours just on volunteering. Okay. I had made a conscious decision with counsel and speaking with God to drop everything except 10 mentees. And then I started the book club in January. And that's it. It has freed me up other time because I need to get the book done. I needed to be able to speak from stage, other things. And those people are doing fine, all those organizations. It wasn't about me. And it also allowed others to rise up because many times I'm chairing different groups or task forces and things of that nature. And I'll pick up one or two more volunteer commitments in the time, as we go on, but I'll look at that. So again, that's why the podcast at this point is not it's not it's not going to happen. I just don't have the physical time to be able to do the podcast. But I would love it. I would love it because I'm not gonna say I think differently. It just I've had some life experiences that again, my questions are going to be probably more a little not raw, but I'm going to dig deep. I love deep work and I love digging deep into the whys of our behavior and our actions.
Well, Ken, we're going to move into the final four, and I'm going to kick it off with it's going to be a loaded question. We asked all our guests this, but from your perspective, what would you say is your greatest success?
um, Probably my greatest success. This is interesting. It's probably this. Oh man, sometimes we try to do a modifier because we think the answer is going to be weird or different. So we try to modify by saying something up front. I was getting ready to do a modifier and I'm not going to do it. My greatest success, period, is loving me. Period. It's loving me. From what I've done and the things that I've done to others and myself, it took years to be able to love me. That's probably my greatest success because everything else really comes from that. Between that, my self-talk and loving me and my relationship with God, everything else is really a component of that. So that's probably my greatest success.
Okay. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Starting a business, my first business, I was scared to death. Because you go from a certain salary. I was making 80,000 at the time, 2014, 2013. Took me 6 months to start it because I was so afraid. But because again, I couldn't turn to anybody and say it's your fault, Mr. and Mrs. Boss. Couldn't the clients couldn't blame it, on the donors if I was in fundraising. So anyway, whew, that was scary. And I've been successful since day one. And it's because we shortchanged. Because the only reason I'm successful in my business is because I'm a value added. People don't give me business because they like Ken. It's because what I can do for them. And I'm very good at what I do. Very good.
Awesome. It's going to be a little lighter with this question. Ken, what is something that never fails to make you laugh? I mean, just tears coming down your sides, or you holding your stomach, you just can't stop laughing.
I put two. It's so funny because what I always say, what makes me laugh is my past. I can just go back, and that is one of the greatest gifts I've been allowed to have is to be able to laugh at myself. Laugh at myself. I remember one time I was with a partner of mine, and we were really in a bad spot smoking crack in LA. And I looked at him and I said to him, "Are we having fun yet?" And I'll never forget that. We were not having fun. Are we having fun yet? Yeah,
What do you say? I don't know, but I
yeah,
feel good.
yeah. Well, we weren't even good. We were coming down, and it was not
Oh
cool. Yeah, it was.
no.
Are we having fun yet? And I can do that almost on any situation. I have one more. So I'm getting ready to be sentenced for my first felony, which is burglary, home burglary, which is usually a 5-year minimum. It's called a crime of violence. And in Seattle, Washington. And as you can tell, I can talk. I can talk. You can give me a word, and I can talk on it probably a half hour. Okay. Anyway, the judge says, "Oh, and I don't even like think this is real." I'm like, "Don't you know I'm Ivy League and stuff?" And he's like, "I'm getting ready to sentence you, Mr. Miller. Do you have anything to say?" And and I couldn't say anything. I was like, "No, this is real." And I had nothing I could say because there was nothing that was going to modify it or change it. And I'll never forget. It was like the first time somebody had shut me up, and it was that judge said, "I'm getting ready to sentence you."
Oh,
Last one. You got me laughing now. Last one. So the judge, I'm going for my third felony, Judge Hardesty, Peter Hardesty in Washoe County Superior Court. And he said, "Mr. Miller, the next time you come into my courtroom with a felony, which a felony is you steal $51 and above, anything over 50. I'm giving you the habitual criminal statute, which is 25 to life." He's telling me this. And I've had people tell me, this was 20 years ago. "Hey, did you believe him?" I said, "Man, I still believe him." Did you mean what did I believe him? I believe him. 25.
like heck yeah.
I mean, you do 25 before you come up for parole. I understand what that. Been there
Right,
3 times. Okay.
right,
Yeah.
right,
He's retired now. He went to the Supreme Court for Nevada,
right,
and they
right.
believe he's retired. But yeah, I still believe him 20 years
Still
later.
believe him. Hey,
Believe.
you weren't about to test him out, were you? You weren't about to
Oh my
try him.
God. That was one time where I shut up. I'm like, oh
Right,
man.
right. Let me see if he's joking or not.
Yeah, but I have not been arrested since, okay?
Right, right, right. Last final four is what's one thing you wish you were better at?
I wish I was better at. Oh, great question. Something I wish I was better at. I I wish I was better at touching people. I'm talking about volume of people. I'm trying. Being on this podcast, on the podcast I do 4 to 6 podcasts a month. And this is why I wrote the book. But I wish I was better at touching people and helping them to become their true self. And actually to be a true self, because you can be a true self and be a bad person. I've been around some bad people. And let me put it, I've been around people who are bad in that moment, in that present. Okay. And they may be beautiful people today. People would have said, Ken Miller is a bad person. Okay. He's an evil person because I did some evil things. I'm not that person today. So if I can help someone go that, I wish I was better at that. I wish I had a bigger platform to share. And I'm ramping up though. And I believe this book will help. Let me say this one thing about the book before anything happens. If anyone who's on this podcast wants a signed, numbered copy at no cost, email me, ken@kenmillerspeaks.com. And that's my truth. I will send it. I can afford it. I will send you a signed copy. Okay.
Well, Ken, I'm gonna sign it. I want the book. I'm gonna put it right here on the podcast. I'm
Yeah.
gonna send you an email after this because you touched me by allowing me to sit at your table and ear hustle your conversation twice.
Charge you. I'm charging you.
And I
Yeah,
don't
you
mind
charging
paying.
him, huh?
I don't mind paying because I was like, Dre. I said, Dre. I was talking to Dre. I was like, I don't know, man. This guy, I tell him about how amazing he is on Facebook. He gives me one words, but that's because he didn't talk to me. He talked to
Right.
someone else, and I was ear hustling. That's why I was
He
in
was
the
like, "Who's
shadows.
this Yahoo who keeps talking to me?"
but your words just transformed the whole
Yeah.
community. I speak to my brothers, my sisters every day. And because I talked to my wife, I said, this guy just found I'm gonna do ancestry. As soon as we got before we even left, we drove down to Manchester from Dartmouth to Manchester to fly back to Tampa. And we talked about you on that 2-hour drive to Manchester. As soon as I got home, I sent off my kit. So your waves, your light shines so far. People are listening to you. You're impacting them in ways that you don't know. And to allow me to find my family, my brothers, my sisters, my nieces, and I had that fear too before my father passed away. I was nervous about meeting him. I flew to New York. We had a great dinner. We sat and spoke for like 2 hours. And then he passed less than a year ago, but we started a little relationship. And that's all because of you, Ken. So thank you.
So let me say that all I was a catalyst. So many times we get the idea and then we don't follow through. And you follow through. And I want to honor that, Kevin. Seriously, I want to honor that. You had the courage, the fortitude, and the wherewithal to do it. I had too many people talk about doing something or making change, but you did it. So thank you, thank you. And thank you, Dre. Incredible question. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
Sure, man. Appreciate you being on the podcast. Keep doing what you're doing.